All right, the webinar is being recorded. Welcome, everybody. This is the second meeting of the Body-worn Cameras Subcommittee of the Ad Hoc Committee on Police Reform, Police Policy Reform. We hope to have Ems join us, and Joel, and who else? Hopefully Sandra can join us tonight. But we have a quorum, and we're going to move ahead, and they can join us here. This is a public meeting being conducted on a Zoom platform because we are complying with Governor Brown's executive order of stay home and save lives to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And I think we all look forward to the day when we can meet in person, but in the meantime, we're on Zoom. I have a few opening remarks that kind of follow along the information packet, information that I sent to you, I believe it was on Friday. And I'll go through it quickly so that the committee can get into the subject at hand tonight, which is body-worn cameras. This is the second meeting, as I mentioned, and the format that has been working pretty well for the subcommittees. And I see Ems is joining us. Great. Hello, Ems. Welcome. The format that has worked pretty well is that the second meeting of the subcommittee is a chance to really discuss some of the policy recommendations and motions that you want to bring to the larger ad hoc committee. Now, we've got a couple of content experts with us tonight. So we have Lieutenant Sam Miguel from Eugene Police Department, and we have City Prosecutor Travis Smith. They helped on the first subcommittee meeting. They've offered their time again tonight, and we have mentioned to them already that at some point after the subcommittee is done answering questions and getting the information that they need from Lieutenant Sam Miguel and Travis Smith, that you may choose to ask them to exit the meeting so that then you can have your conversations going on without them. So that's a possibility. In the information packet that I sent were links to the pre-recorded presentations. Those are always available for you to review. I won't spend any more time on those. I also want to bring to your attention that in the information packet was that kind of spreadsheety looking thing, and it has the policy recommendations around body-worn cameras and some technology from Campaign Zero and 21st Century Policing. And so that's going to be a spreadsheet that may be helpful tonight. I've got it ready to share on the screen if you want me to. Let's see, Kaz is attending still to a family emergency, and so he won't be facilitating the meeting tonight, so you're stuck with me. Sorry. We miss Kaz and we send him our best. And just a reminder that we have 3 large ad hoc committee meetings remaining. We have March 2nd, we have March 17th, and we have March 31st. That last meeting on the 31st will be dedicated to reviewing the report that will be going to council, and hopefully the committee will be approving that report. And then as I wrap up, just a reminder that the council has asked the ad hoc committee and the subcommittees to use kind of a 3-question format when they're thinking about recommendations or thinking about putting motions together. And let me read you those questions just to remind you. So the first question is to ask is, what is the issue that the community is experiencing, and which communities are experiencing those things the most? Secondly, what specifically and clearly is your recommended change or your recommended motion? And number 3, how do you think that recommended change will address the problem and achieve the desired result? So that's a 3-question format. And then I'm looking at my notes, and sorry, I thought that was my last thing, but I have one more thing. I just want to remind you of the few notes that we took during the first body-worn cameras subcommittee meeting way back in January. and they're quick. I'll read them to you, and it just may help you remember about where we left off. So the first one is officers should not have the ability to turn off or mute their cameras. Evidence control should redact material that is tactically sensitive if required. The second one is copy of the original and unredacted video should be kept for viewing by cleared personnel or those with authorized clearance. And then finally, and I don't remember who said this, but they said, I feel the only time a camera should be turned off is when, the only time a camera should be turned off on a call or interacting with somebody should be if they say they do not want to be recorded for their privacy. So those were the three comments that came out of the first meeting. With that, I am going to fade a little bit into the background here and let the committee ask our content experts questions and go on from there. And if you need my help, or if I feel like I need to put something up on the screen, I'll do that. Let me know how I can be helpful. All right. Thank you. Go for it, subcommittee.
One thing that we haven't discussed has been dash cams, car cams, and their correlation to footage being filmed during any kind of an interaction. I think I know that the dash cam is, the police cam is set to begin recording when an officer, maybe you can help me, Lieutenant San Miguel, leaves the vehicle, or when they enter the vehicle.
I'm not sure I understood your question. Sorry.
So the camera on the police officer, the police vehicle, has an automatic setting to turn on or to turn off when a officer leaves the vehicle.
So the setting to turn off on the camera in the patrol car is when you turn on the overhead lights. So anytime you activate the overhead lights, it activates the camera in the car. There's also a feature that if you're arriving in an area where other officers have activated their body cameras, then it will activate the in-car system in the car. So if you're in an emergency situation and you're rushing to a call, your camera will be activated, if you turn on the lights, or if you show up, and body cameras can also trigger the in-car camera.
So my question is in regards to the November 30th incident that took place this last year. I understand that there's footage of the gentleman that was shot. There's footage of him fleeing the police. Is that from body cams, or is that from the patrol car?
I do not know. I haven't viewed that footage, so I don't know if it's from the body cameras or in-car video footage. I would imagine there's footage from both cars and body cameras from that scene, but I haven't viewed them.
Just what I would like to know is if we're having the capability of always having the patrol car footage filming the active pursuit or anything that's taking place, so that we can always have that available to us, or that available to the CRB, whoever it might want to see that footage.
Yeah, the in-car cameras don't record 24/7. They have to be activated either by overhead lights or activation of a body camera.
Thank you.
Would it be helpful for the subcommittee if I put the spreadsheet of policy recommendations up for people to take a look at? I see a thumbs up. Okay, I will do that, and that may help the conversation here. Okay, can people see that? Are people able to see that spreadsheet? I'm not sure if, yeah, okay, thank you. Just a quick kind of refresher on this. The first column on the left is just our internal numbering system. The description of the Campaign Zero and 21st Century Policing policy recommendation is that second column. The third column is important because this is where it's indicated if Eugene Police Department has that recommendation or that policy included in their current policies. So a yes or a Y in that column would indicate that that is already included in EPD's policies. The next column is just notes if there are other jurisdictions involved or that should be considered. And then finally, the last column on the right is notes provided by EPD. So if we go down the list, the first three of those recommendations are already included in Eugene Police Policy. The first one that is a no or has an N in the column, in that third column, is that it reads, ban police officers from taking cell phones or other recording devices without a person's consent or warrant, and give people the right to sue police departments if they take or destroy those devices. If I remember correctly, I think there was a brief conversation about that during the first subcommittee meeting. I'm not going to read the rest of these no's to you, but you can take a look at them and it may be a place, a point of departure for the next part of the conversation.
Kevin, would you mind dropping the link? Is this an online document?
I'm sorry, Erica, the link to which?
To this document, is this in Google Docs? No, it doesn't seem
No.
like. No.
This was included in the information packet sent to subcommittee members.
Yes, I do have it, but I'm looking for it. Don't worry. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Let me know if I can be helpful. One of the issues that did come up in the first subcommittee meeting was the next recommendation that has an N here. Notify subjects that they have the option to remain anonymous and stop recording or storing footage if they choose this option. I believe that was a topic of conversation in the first meeting. I will just briefly mention the no's just to help the conversation along. The next one is allow civilians to review footage of themselves or their relatives and request this be released to the public and stored for at least 2 years. The next one, which has been partially enacted in EPD policy, is to require body and dash cam footage to be stored externally and ensure district attorneys and civilian oversight structures have direct access to that footage. The next one is require police departments, whenever they want to deny a Freedom of Information Act request for body or dash cam footage, to prove in court that the footage constitutes a legitimate Freedom of Information Act exemption. The next, which has been indicated as partially enacted in EPD policies, says that it include a disciplinary matrix clearly defining consequences for officers who fail to adhere to the agency's body camera policy. The next one is prevent officers from reviewing footage of an incident before completing initial reports, statements, or interviews about an incident. And if I remember correctly, we had a brief conversation in the subcommittee about that topic in the first subcommittee meeting. And then finally, the policy that's indicated as no or not applicable to EPD is update privacy laws to protect civilians from having video or audio recordings released publicly that do not contain potential evidence in a use of force incident, misconduct incident, or discharge of a weapon or death. Okay. Subcommittee, how would you like to proceed?
So I've been looking for my notes regarding these policies, and I remember that we had gone through a number of them. Some of the yeses, some of the nos, but you don't have that highlighted here. So some of the concerns that we had, we did discuss, but I do want to get back to the taking the, let's see, taking the cameras from people that are filming. I definitely think that we should ban the right. I do not think that police officers should have the right to take cell phones from anybody with even consent. If they want to receive cell phone footage, they have to get a warrant. But I thought that we already discussed that at the last meeting.
We did discuss, I remember the conversation with Chief. He was making the analogy of a cell phone being kind of a repository of potential information and evidence. And he was making the analogy to a house. A house could contain certain evidence.
Okay. Well, I mean, if do we have any policies that we had asked or move forward from the last meeting?
We didn't, Silverio. The only things were those kind of the three comments that I had read. So there was no clearly worded recommendations that came out of the subcommittee yet.
I have a semi-done recommendation. It is not about the cell phones. So if you want, Silverio, we could first talk about the cell phones and then move on.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think that we should. My notes keep disappearing because I have so many different windows up. I apologize. So I think that we should not allow and we should ban any officer from taking cell phones or recording devices from people. Without consent is the issue that I'm hesitating on, because somebody could think that they're doing the right thing by giving their consent to taking the footage or taking the camera. It's often the camera. But I definitely feel as though it is not something that somebody has, that the officer has the right to just take away. So I would put forward a motion that we would ban officers from taking cell phones and recording devices from a person without their consent or a warrant, which is a warrant that is signed by a judge, and give people whose items, recording devices, have been taken away from them the right to sue if those have been taken away or destroyed.
Okay, great, Silverio. If I understand you correctly, that is you're agreeing with the wording that's here in the spreadsheet.
That's correct.
Okay, terrific. Questions, comments about that? While we have Lieutenant San Miguel and City Prosecutor Travis Smith, and then Silverio, I am understanding that you would want to create that as a motion, and that we can go forward with that process. But I'm wondering if there's any questions or comments to Lieutenant San Miguel or Travis Smith.
There has to be a second before we talk about it.
Right. If you want to move that right now, I can go right into that process. Happy to do that. So Silverio has moved. And
We
police
could just give an option to.
I personally do not have any questions right now for any of the folks that have joined us. And I don't know if I will have any in the future. I cannot think of any burning questions that I will have. So I'm okay if they decide to call it a night for themselves and go have a family moment. But if they want to hang out, that's okay with me too.
Sure. Thanks, Ems. I think there's going to be a point in time here where we do ask the lieutenant and Travis Smith to go about their evening. I'm not sure we're quite there yet, but that is totally up to the subcommittee, of course, not my call. Silverio, I didn't want to kind of step on your toes there. Are you ready to move that?
Well, the only thing that I'm thinking about is I thought that we had put these forward as motions in the past at the past meeting to present them to the ad hoc committee as a whole, and that we would be discussing them. So I'm fine with, let's just hit these up again. I'll make some motions and make some clear motions of policy change.
Great. Yeah. In fact, we did not get that far at the first subcommittee meeting. And so, yeah, maybe we can do that this time around. All right. So we have a motion on the table, moved by Silverio, and Ems has seconded. And hang on while I just make note of this. And now it's time for discussion and question.
I have a question.
Abdul Rahman, I see your hand. Go ahead.
My question is, if the private property phones and recording equipment has been on site, and we're putting the motion for those not to be collected or picked up by the police, but how far does this go? If the general public or a neighbor is in the neighborhood recording the incident, does it go that far to collect the recording equipment and phones from those people as well, or not? Just wondering how far does it go?
So according to my understanding with this, it will just go as far as the judge will allow it. So if and correct anybody, correct me if I'm wrong. So if the police knows who has video of the incident, then they could go and ask for a warrant for these devices. But then they wouldn't be able to actually collect people just because like they believe that they have some one person has video. They don't necessarily, the police doesn't make that decision. The judge will be the one making the decision whether they need to go bother the house with cameras because they might have evidence.
Did that answer your question, Abdul Rahman?
Yeah.
Okay. Silverio, I'd like to, if you're able to talk about what the problem is that you see here that this is trying to solve, which communities are being affected by that problem, and how you think the motion will address the problem. I think you're still muted.
I thought I unmuted. It's a right for somebody to be able to carry that on their person and to be able to record. That's already been determined. So if a situation arises where a police officer doesn't want extra footage getting around, then they can obtain a warrant for that information. That's already that's already been decided. So I feel as though this would affect communities that are most often underserved by not allowing for them to have that footage as partial evidence for some kind of interaction that might take place, and I'm not saying they're taking place, that might take place that is detrimental to the BIPOC community.
Okay, thank you. I think that's important to get into the conversation. Any other questions, comments? All right, I'm hearing none. Let's go through the roll call vote. Let me read it into the record. This motion is would ban police officers from taking cell phones or other recording devices without a person's consent or warrant, and give people the right to sue police departments if they take or destroy these devices. Ems, how do you vote?
Yes.
Macy?
Yes.
Abdul Rahman?
Yes.
Erica?
Yes.
And Silverio?
Yes.
Thank you. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yes and 0 no. So that motion carries. I want to make sure that I can see everyone who's here. Okay. I want to make sure that Joel hadn't joined us, but he's not here with us tonight. Okay. Well done. And the next item is M's. What do you have for us?
So I will share my screen, but I'm also doing notes on that. So I'm just gonna
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing.
message, and then if you could then share that too, please. So I kind of tried to word it within the questions that they were asking us to answer. And it's due to the lack of trust in the police. Video footage from body and dash cameras should not be stored within the police department. Locations like the Civil Review Board and police authority should store them. And appropriate access will be given to district attorneys and others with proper authorization. And it will increase trust and transparency in the public things. And I listed there which internal number we have.
Okay, that was that internal numbering system.
Yep.
Okay. Let me see if I can bring that up.
And it's not amazingly wordy, and that's why I wanted to discuss them. Because
Yeah, exactly. Okay, gotcha. I'm gonna, oh my gosh, folks. Sometimes I wonder about my abilities. I am going to create a file that I can share with the wording that you dropped in the chat, and so we have that forever, because the chat goes away.
Yep.
Which I found out to my horror several times. Okay. Bear with me, folks. All right. There we go. That's what you dropped in the chat. Ems, you want to speak to that?
well, we have talked about how overall a lot of our communities do not trust the police. Part of it is when there's a case of police brutality or police shooting, when a video is stored within the person that is going case with him, does not seem like proper at all or clear, or the level of transparency it's not necessarily there, and then that raises a lot of questions about what they could do with the footage. So by having it stored somewhere else, it will help gain trust and actually be able to have more transparency within the process. Especially because the people that will have to access it, they will still access. I didn't put exactly where it should be housed, but that's about major things about like the hardware that they have or what they could do with it, and the Oregon law too. So like another thing that I thought about later on, when I was writing before I even, sorry, it's been a long day. Before I had before I could change it, the meeting started. I was thinking maybe put it in city records with the city recorder, but I don't know if that's a viable option due to federal and state ordinances or policies. But it's just a recommendation to be stored somewhere else.
Okay. And Ems, you brought up a really good point, which is everyone has had a full day, and we are greatly appreciative of you being here this evening and giving of your time and your thoughts. So thank you. Silverio, I see your hand.
Yep, thank you. So Ems, this is what we're talking about with the ACH CPP 13. Could we add your language to that policy and then make a motion that we?
That's totally okay with me. Yep, I haven't had a chance to keep working on wording, so
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring it to the group. And
can we have a motion put forward to make it a policy that we put forward to the ad hoc committee?
Yeah, I put forward that motion.
And I'll second it.
So if I understand correctly, we are adding to the number 13 on the spreadsheet, and number 13 reads require body and dash cam footage to be stored externally and ensure district attorneys and civilian oversight structures have direct access to the footage. And now I'm a little bit unclear as to what we're adding to that.
So there was some language that Ems had that was specific to the city of Eugene.
And
I believe he's talking about the the number 13 within the.
right. So Ems, and sorry, it's been a long day for me too, so a little slow on the uptake here. So Ems, you were talking about the fact that it should not be stored within the police department.
Yes.
And number 13 just says externally. So what you're doing is just making a clarification.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I want to make sure I get this how you want it. So oh my gosh. La, la, la. Okay, folks. Bear with me here. All right, I'm going to share my screen so that you can all see what I'm trying to do here. There we go. Okay. So here's how it read in the spreadsheet. Require body and dash cam footage to be stored externally and ensure district attorneys and civilian oversight structures have direct access to the footage. And Ems, you are suggesting that we clarify that it just not in the police department.
Yes. So
Okay.
Nothing to do with the police department. Not directly under the police department.
Okay. Okay, does that capture what you are after?
Yep.
Okay. So, Ems, you have moved that, and Silverio, you seconded, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any questions or comments at this point? Questions for our content experts? All right. Comments from subcommittee? All right. We're ready for a vote on this. Require body and dash cam footage to be stored externally, not directly under the control of the police department, and ensure district attorneys and civilian oversight structures have direct access to the footage. Ems, how do you vote?
Yes.
Macy,
Yes.
Abdul Rahman,
Another yes.
Erica,
Yes.
Severio,
Yes.
and Sandra, welcome. Thanks for joining us. How do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. That is 6 yes and 0 no. So that motion carries as well. All right. We've had Silverio, we've had Ems. Let me go back and share the spreadsheet to you. There we go. Okay. In no particular order, I suppose, but one of the no's, one of these recommendations that is not currently in EPD policy that the subcommittee may wish to consider is notify subjects that they have the option to remain anonymous and stop recording or storing footage if they choose this option. The next one is allow civilians to review footage of themselves or their relatives and request this be released to the public and stored for at least 2 years. I'm going to highlight that so that, okay. The next one would be require police departments whenever they want to deny a Freedom of Information Act request for body or dash cam footage to prove in court that the footage constitutes a legitimate Freedom of Information Act exemption.
I will make part of a suggestion, so to go in the report, that the city of Eugene should work with state legislation to change that.
Okay, the city of Eugene should work with, say that again, I'm sorry.
State legislation to change the to be able, because part of the reason is that the state of Oregon has policies in place. So I will encourage the city of Eugene to go and talk to the state legislation to get the process moving to update the policy or the laws to what we need in 2020 or 2021.
So the update the laws that would allow what?
Hold on, let me make my screen bigger to be able to read. Yeah, right. Because we're in number 14. So just to, I'm actually talking about a different one. To prove incorporated. Yeah, never mind. I would like to move this motion as it's written, actually.
As it's written. Yeah. Okay.
Second.
Gotcha. Let me put that on my other document here. All right. So you are moving to require police departments whenever they want to deny a Freedom of Information Act request for body or dash cam footage to prove in court that the footage constitutes a legitimate Freedom of Information Act exemption.
Yes.
Okay. So you are moving that. We need a second, and then we'll move into questions and comments.
I second.
So Vario seconds. And now it's time for discussion on this motion that we have on the table.
I'm just gonna comment that it goes, oh, sorry. I am not looking at my screen, so I don't know who talked.
Oh, you're fine. Go ahead.
So what I wanted to comment on is that it goes back into being more transparent and being able to gain some trust, or the public to trust the police.
Questions or comments for our content experts while we have them here?
Kevin, can somebody simplify the content of this message?
Sure.
Please.
Yes. And actually, that might be a great question and request for Lieutenant San Miguel and Travis Smith. So Abdul Rahman is asking to simplify, put into other words what this motion is getting at.
I can comment on that. I'm trying to look at, oh, it went away. I wanted to look at the text. We go over here.
Oh, I'll bring it back, Travis.
No, I got it on my other computer here. It's fine.
Okay.
So it's actually kind of interesting, because I think I look at this and I go, I think the language here, and I think part of it is when it says governed at state level by public records law, this is kind of an accurate summation of the current state of the law right now. So I don't know if this would require any affirmative action by EPD, because right now, if you deny a Freedom of Information request, you can be challenged. And the police department or whoever has control of that video has to prove through the public records process that there is an exception. And so, of course, the big giant exception right now with body cam is, as I think it was mentioned, maybe, I think it was the last time I was here, and someone referenced a statement that I think the DA Patty Perlow made as well, that the super short version is right now in the state of Oregon, body cams are not considered public records. And so you can ask and ask and ask all you want, and a law enforcement agency or whatever the controlling body is going to be able to very easily say, these aren't public records, you don't get them. Now there is that exception, right? And there's that exception for unique and important public events. And I can't remember exactly what the language is, but I know that the language in the statute was disseminated to everybody last time around. And so that's where it gets kind of subjective. And so I would think I would encourage everybody to look at what the exception is for the body cams and look at that language and maybe craft some requirements around that. I personally think that if the public has an interest in seeing video, unless there's some sort of ongoing criminal investigation that would require that it be kept private in the short term, that I think you should always err on releasing that. And I think that we've seen that in the past with EPD and other departments where you have like the shooting that happened in November, where that information did end up being released relatively quick after the incident. And so, I think I was thinking about this and I was looking, I was like, I don't know what we would do if you take the language that's there right now and say EPD follow this. I don't know if there would be any change from what the current state is, because it's kind of summarizing the process right now.
Silverio.
So no harm, no foul. If we put this forward as a policy to the ad hoc committee as a whole, no harm, no foul.
Well, I don't think it requires any affirmative action to be done by the police department based on the language that I see right there. I think that if you want to include that, then that's your choice.
No harm, no foul.
But yeah, I don't think there's anything I don't think you need to have anything in the palm or anything like that changed based on that language. Yeah.
I want to make sure that Abdul Rahman, you had your question addressed.
Well, I'm still a little confused. Is it, in simple words, that a camera footage can be used as an evidence on court? Is this, if I want to put this as a question, is this what it says in there or not? Or I'm misunderstanding the point?
My understanding of the language, and Silver, maybe I'm misreading this, but this language is saying if someone wants to access a civilian or anybody wants to access that body cam footage or dash cam footage, that there's a process that you have to follow in order for that individual to gain access to that video. It sounds like the question that I just heard has to do with body cams being used as evidence in criminal law, in criminal cases. And I don't know if that's necessarily what this is about. Does that make sense?
So it doesn't relate. It's nothing to do with the evidence.
I don't think they're connected issues.
Just the
No,
access process.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's clearer. It's my misunderstanding. I thought whether it can be used as an evidence in court, or it's just about the access. Who can access this, and they need to go through courts or maybe a process to be able to access and view. So they are two different things. It's
Yes.
not about evidence, it's just about access.
This is about public access to the body cam footage. That's how I read the language in that. The
Okay.
thing that you voted on in regards of allowing officers to review body cam footage before they make a report, that can have some kind of impact on whether or not that can be used as evidence in a criminal case. The primary mechanism that I would use to authenticate body cam footage in a criminal case would be, I'd put the officer on the stand and I would say, the video that you're about to see, is this an accurate representation of what you saw that day? Now, in order for me to ask that question, that is going to require that officer to view that video before I put him on the stand to ask him that. So the prior thing that you guys said, that might impact that a little bit. I don't, but yeah.
Thank you, Steve. Travis.
Had a question for Travis. So in order for this to create an actual change, we will have to change the way that body cams are viewed as a public. I forgot what you said.
It's whether or not body cams are a public record.
Public record, right? So then
Yeah.
that will be a state level.
And so that right now there's pretty clear legislation at the state level on, yes. And so the city would have to do something that would conflict with that, and that may or may not be allowed.
M's, one of the things that the subcommittee might consider is just, as you started to say there previously, just make a recommendation that the city of Eugene pursue that at the state level.
And that's kind of where I was going. Not in my notes. I'm kind of a little bit of a mess right now. So yeah, so that I will have include that that the city follows and gives recommendation for to Oregon legislation to change.
Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing that. So we actually have this motion moved and seconded to require police departments whenever they want to deny a Freedom of Information Act and so on. So am I hearing that you want to change that, or do you want to vote on this one? Are you thinking about taking this one off the table? Help me understand.
So I second it. So I'd like to ask that this motion is on the table. We have to make a motion. We have to make a vote on this motion. I think as an aside, we should consider asking the second portion of this, which is it's a state level thing that is mandated by public records law. I think we're getting lost with the whole conversation. This is just strictly about any kind of video footage that's can be FOIA'd. If it can be FOIA'd, we should be able to have access to that. That's it. This has nothing to do with any other concerns. So I think we should vote on this, and then any other portion of this should be a different motion.
Okay. Any other comments or questions regarding the motion we have on the table? Hearing none, let's vote. Ems, how do you vote? Ems?
Yes.
Thank you. Macy?
Yes.
Thank you. Abdul Rahman?
Yes.
Erica?
Yes.
Thank you. Silverio?
Yes.
Thank you. And Sandra?
Yes.
Thank you very much. That's 6 yes and 0 no. So that motion carries. Now, if I understood the subcommittee, perhaps now you want to consider asking the City of Eugene or recommending the City of Eugene to pursue a change in state law to allow body cam footage to be public record.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
yeah. Let me write some things here and see if I can capture it, and then you help me change it if I miss something, okay? Recommend that the City of Eugene I'm just using the word lobby, and that may not be the right word. Lobby the state legislature to allow body cam and dash. Oh, we're just talking about body cam, right?
Silver,
They're one and the same.
I'm not sure.
body
So that's
and
okay.
dash cam. Silver, you said all video, right?
Yeah, yeah. I would basically say that we should press the state legislators to make all dash cam and all body cam footage public record. And
Okay.
you just disregard that word allow, make.
Okay. How's that? Oh my gosh, my typing skills. To make all body cam and dash cam video public record. Is that what you just said?
That's perfect. And then we wouldn't have to deal with a waiting time of 14 days from the released footage of the incident that took place on November 30th.
Okay. Okay, if I've captured that correctly, we need someone to move that and second it to have a discussion.
I would move that we would institute, and we would call it ACHCPP 20, a recommendation to the ad hoc committee that the City of Eugene press state legislators to make all dash cam and body cam footage public record.
Okay. So I have just a slight difference in wording here. I say press the state legislature. You say press the state legislators.
Could we do both? Hyphen?
Sure.
Get them all.
How about I put a hyphen in there so it's not one big honking word? Okay. All right, Silverio, you have moved that. I didn't hear a second.
I'll second that.
Ems has seconded that. Any comments, questions, or discussion? All right, I'm hearing none. Let's go to a vote. Ems, how do you vote?
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Macy?
Yes.
Thank you. Abdul Rahman?
Yes.
Thank you. Erica?
Yes.
Thank you. And Silverio?
Yes. And don't
Thank
forget
you.
Sandra.
And Sandra? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Oh, I just reminded you that Sandra is here with us now.
Yes, of course. We're glad to have you, Sandra. And I heard your yes. That's 6 yes and 0 no. So that motion carries as well.
Thank you, Silver.
Yes. I feel like a kid in a candy store.
Okay. Well, why don't we go to the next one that has a no in that third column, and that reads, prevent officers from reviewing footage of an incident before completing initial reports, statements, or interviews about an incident. If I recall correctly, we did have a brief conversation about that in the first subcommittee meetings, and there was conversations. I think Lieutenant San Miguel was saying that, you know, one of the reasons why that happens is so that the officer can remember everything that took place during an incident. And Lieutenant, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but that's my recollection.
Yes, that's exactly correct. We want officers to be writing the most accurate police reports that they can. And sometimes reviewing the video will trigger their memory when they're writing the reports. And we don't want them to misstate or misquote anyone in a report, things like that. So it ensures the accuracy so that when the prosecution and the defense and anybody really gets the report, they know it's an accurate reflection of what happened.
And if I recall, the concerns that were brought up were, well, actually, I don't recall. So can you can you remind us what?
Yeah,
what
I think the concerns are that for us, at least, if an officer is writing a report and they say that the person I interviewed said X, Y, and Z, but then the actual verbiage that the person used was slightly different. That could be used to impeach the officer because, you know, they wrote something in the report that is slightly different than what was said. And so we just want their reports to be as accurate as possible.
Okay, so you're saying that if an officer doesn't have the opportunity to view the video, that they may inadvertently exclude things or write something different in their report that didn't happen?
It's possible they could remember things differently. They could remember a quote different than how it was really spoken, those sort of things.
Okay. All right, and I remember some concerns from the subcommittee. Silverio.
So not a concern. Here's the thing. These reports are done time and time again. And there's some officers that have been in the force for a long time, and the details get hazy. So they start to maybe make a mixture of different details in one report. And I know that that's a situation that arises. I don't really have an issue with this. I think that an officer, if it's footage that we can see, then an officer can go back and look and say, okay, well, this is where this took place and this is where this took place. Campaign Zero really doesn't have a lot to say on this. I think that really there's no issue with an officer reviewing a specific situation or report before he does his final reporting on that, because it does get hazy. They do start to see, you know, these interactions becoming just one big amalgam of different interactions, and those end up in the reports, and that's not fair to any of the suspects.
Okay, thanks, Silverio.
And I'll just add that if the video is used to assist the officer in writing the report, that's automatically available to the city prosecutor as well as the public defender or the person who was arrested or the suspect. That would be automatically made available.
How fast is it made available to the suspect?
Travis might be better able to answer that because they generally release the videos from their office to the public defender's office and to the defendants. We route them through the city attorney. So I'll let Travis answer.
Yeah, let me put my hand down here. Sorry. The video is made available very, very quickly because we're misdemeanor crimes as opposed to the DA's office. Our turnaround time's quite a bit faster. As soon as we know that the individual is either represented by an attorney and we get that notification from the court or from a defense attorney, or they notify us that they're pro se, meaning that they want to represent themselves, we can make it available very, very quickly, usually within a couple days. I don't like to promise that to people because sometimes things happen, but it's very, very quick. And we can either give it by download or sometimes with there's people that kind of struggle with the technology piece, we can put it on a flash drive, that kind of stuff. So.
Okay, thanks, Travis. And I'm gonna go to Sandra. She's had her hand up for a bit, and I want to get back to you, Travis, because I think you had your hand up on maybe a slightly different issue, and I see Ems, your hand is up as well. So Sandra, go ahead.
I have a question. I forgot. When is it considered interference if somebody's videoing an altercation?
When is it considered an interference when someone is videoing an altercation? Okay.
I think that question is referencing a conversation we had before and regarding interfering with a police officer as a crime. And so it's when is that line where someone who's recording an incident that's happening is actually interfering physically with the officer's ability to investigate the crime and do their job. And so I think the example I had was, and this is just case law that was from a couple of years ago, I think at the Oregon Supreme Court, And how they interpreted it was, look, someone can video and record and they can do whatever they want, but that the officer gave that individual an order saying, you can't come near me, you can't get so physically close to me that I have to worry about you, as opposed to this domestic violence incident that is happening right in front of me. It was in the front yard of a residence. And so so it wasn't really the recording of the camera itself. It was all those other physical things that the other person was doing while they were holding the camera. That's what was interfering. Is recording something without
I
impact
remember that
by law
conversation.
enforcement interfering? It's not, no.
Okay, so if I see something going on, I can record as long as I stay a good distance away, right?
Yes.
And
To
also,
clarify, I'm not giving you legal advice one way or the other as an attorney, I guess. But
Always a
but
lawyer.
yes, but yes.
okay,
You feel free to do that.
Does that answer your question, Sandra?
yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah,
Good
thank
night.
you. Ems, go ahead. And Silverio, I see your hand. You'll be next.
How fast does the officer get access to the video?
So after the video has been uploaded, the officers can watch their own video. They cannot alter their video, they can't delete their own video, but they can watch their video. They can also share their video with a detective or an attorney or someone specific who has access to evidence.com, but they can watch their own videos.
Is that within an hour, within 2 hours?
It's almost immediate. So, I mean, they could actually watch it in their car before it's fully uploaded, because the way that camera systems work in the car is when you drive to headquarters, you're automatically connect to the Wi-Fi and the in-car video uploads on its own. The body cameras, you have to put them in a docking station at night and then at the end of your shift, and then they upload. But you can view them prior to the upload if you do it through the computer in the car. It's kind of confusing, but they can watch them almost immediately.
Did that answer your question, Ems?
Yes.
Okay, great. Silverio and then Travis.
So I think a lot of these policies that we're looking at sort of have a feeling of there may be some malicious intent on the behalf of the officer, and I think we should not consider that with this particular policy. In fact, it wouldn't be one that I would recommend us discussing at this point in time, but I was having fun getting through all the other ones. I don't think there's any malicious intent. I think it's so that we can be clear on what's going to be put into the notes, whatever the reports are.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I kind of got the same feeling from the subcommittee. Silverio was like, oh, we're not. Yeah, Ems.
Actually, I also believe that there's not malignant intent, but it could be used to get a better story, to get alibis, or I'm not probably using the right words, but it could be a beneficial thing for an officer that might not be a good officer.
I can understand that.
So that's where my uneasiness comes in. It goes. If I get detained, I don't get access to the body cam right away, and they don't go to me like, hey, look at this, and please make a report about it. So that's where I feel like it is not necessarily fair. And I will probably make a motion towards the end of this meeting. And if someone else has to, would like to work on other motions, let's work on those.
Okay. Thanks, Ems. I'm going to call on Travis and then Sandra. Go ahead, Travis.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Is my video working? I can't see myself on the screen.
Your video is not working, but we can hear you.
Oh, there we go.
There you are. We can see and hear you.
So I think Lieutenant San Miguel answered it pretty well. I just wanted to sort of provide the prosecutor's office position or opinion on it, I guess, is that allowing officers to review body cam footage prior to making a report just hands down increases the likelihood of finding the truth, right? Because you
So
are
Travis,
yeah.
Travis, hang on just that your video kind of got a little bit garbled. So if you could repeat what you just said.
I think that allowing this is a position as a prosecutor and someone just seeing something run through the criminal justice process, reviewing body cam footage, make an accurate police report, increases the likelihood of a jury finding the truth, the prosecution and defense finding the truth, the public at large finding the truth. And so by not allowing that, you will see significant, sometimes, inconsistency. And inconsistency is going to lead to a lack of truth finding, whether it be the trial process or anything else. And I see that because I can tell right away sometimes when I'm talking with the police officer, frankly, if they didn't look at their body cam before they wrote their report, or if they didn't look at their body cam before they prepared for trial, because the accuracy is not as high as it should be had they looked at the video. And I think that's the big benefit of body cam, is it increases the likelihood of finding the truth. But if you hamstring that by saying officers can't see this, and I guess if I could pose a question, and maybe I'm just not understanding it, what is it that an officer could do that is some sort of malfeasance when they have access to that body cam that not having access to the body cam eliminates? And I don't know what that is. And so
A rhetorical question, or are you hoping to get
well,
someone to answer?
I think I heard someone kind of getting at it a little bit, but I guess I'm not understanding that piece, and maybe understanding that piece would allow me to give a better answer. I don't, you know.
So
Okay.
part of my concern is, let's say that, let me think. So there's an officer that escalated a situation, reviews the footage, and they see a slight movement of the hand of the suspect that was not malintended, but then they could use that little slight movement of the hand. I was like, oh, I saw their hand move, and that's why I took out my gun and shot. And I'm not saying it has happened, or because we don't have any proof that it has happened, because we're not part of that process. But as part of this community, is that we have those are our concerns, that it helps the officers that might be bad officers come up with an excuse, or come up with a reason why they did what they did.
Okay, so if I could ask, does that mean that what your concern is, if I understand this correctly, it's really honing in on officer use of force?
Yeah,
access body cam.
Yes, on use of force.
Okay.
And when it comes to use of force and lethal,
Okay. And so I think what I would do then is I would ask Lieutenant Sam McGill. I know that there's a lot of, and I'm not an expert on this because I don't, the world of officer shootings is not a world that I personally live in. That's the DA's office and you know, Lieutenant Sam McGill. She would probably be best at answering what the procedures are that are in place when you do have a shooting, because I know there's a whole host of things that happen that wouldn't normally happen, say if an officer arrests somebody for a theft too and looks at a body cam report beforehand.
Right. So yes, my concern is mostly with police brutality, excessive use, deadly use of force, and all those situations. Not so much when it comes down to theft and other crimes. Also, I had a question, and so I still want to hear from Lieutenant, but at the same time, if they could answer at the same time, that damn, it just came out. Never mind. Continue on, and I will think about that question again.
Okay, thanks, Ems. I want to just pause here and ask Sandra, you had your hand up, and I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to ask a question or make a comment. But I see you put your hand down, so just checking in with you.
Okay, I'm not sure. I'll go ahead and wait.
Okay,
Thank you.
just let me know.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. Yeah, Ems. Yeah.
It was more how. So part of also my concern is that when there's a case about police brutality, the people that are trying to that suffer from police brutality don't get the access right away to those video cameras or that footage. So we're asking them, like at the same time, we're asking them to tell us what happened, and they don't have the footage. So it kind of goes along with how we want them to have every detail if we cannot see the footage, when police officers can, and they could also have every detail. So that's kind of also my point of view.
Gotcha. Okay. I see Erica's hand and then Silverio. Erica, go ahead.
So my concern regarding this issue is specifically in two cases. One is that, you know, in the case of Elibory Rodriguez, like there is in the footage, you know, there is nothing that can be used yet. You know, his killing was justified. So in like, I'm just thinking that, you know, like, and the same in the case of Charlie Landeros, you know, like police have the footage, yet it took a long time for the footage to be able for people to have access to. It took time. Also, you know, the fact that the police have access to the footage, and the police have the power of the media. So like that in certain way, it gives an advantage to the police to use media and to further use media to dehumanize people. That will help them to make a case of justifying the killing of that person. We have the district attorney per law that I don't really know if she really meant to say that, but she say that some people just like to be shot at, right? So I'm just thinking, like, without reasoning, without the way the things have been handled, the way that the cameras have been used to justify this, even if they don't have proofs, and also how this gives an advantage for this to be used in the media to do that to a certain way, like further, like have an advantage, give an advantage to the police in this case, like like in the two cases that I'm mentioning. So that's why that is my concern specifically. about the cameras, you know, like, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Silverio.
I'm sort of turned around on this, and I agree with the policy.
Okay, say that again, because I missed that.
Well, I didn't see any way that there could be, bad intent with the footage of it, but now I'm turned around on this, so I would feel as though this would be a policy that we should put forward.
Okay. Ems?
So I'm hearing that Silverio wants to, I just trying to clarify, either propose it or shelve it.
I think he was saying that he supports it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I didn't understand what issues might arise from this, but I do see that there's some opportunities for malfeasance, as
What we could
Travis had mentioned.
what we could do, and also to be more specific, is that make the put wording that says that it could either that the police officers cannot access the video when it comes to police brutality specific and complaints, and if they don't want, if the city does not want that to happen, it could get the access to that footage should be faster for the suspect that suffered police brutality or the victim of police brutality.
Okay, so Ems, you were saying that perhaps the recommendation as written is too broad, it's too broadly written. And you've suggested a kind of narrowing. And of course, I've proven that I can't multitask very well. So I was cutting and pasting and not listening very well. So could
That's
you?
fine. I was saying that that it should be narrowed down to be specific to police brutality and complaints about police brutality. Because I do not see anything wrong with police officers doing a report about theft or assault that they went to a household to or something like that. But when it comes to police brutality, it's a little bit different.
Okay.
The other addition that I had there is if the city, and maybe this could be another motion. I don't know how the committee wants to do it, but either it could be added here or be another motion that if the city does not or does not want if the city wants the officer to keep to be able to review the footage, it should also be available to the victim of police brutality and to the suspect that suffered police brutality.
So if I could suggest a language change.
Yeah.
In incidences of use of force or police brutality, prevent officers from reviewing footage of an incident before completing initial reports, statements, or interviews about the incident.
All right. So incidents. Oh my gosh. Incidents of use of force and
Incidents involving use of force or police brutality.
Is it deadly use of force or just any use of force? Because I know we've had that conversation before.
I'm fine with use of force. A person might not die initially from their wounds.
Okay, so officers should be prevented from reviewing footage. Okay. So incidents involving use of force or police brutality, officers should be prevented from reviewing footage of an incident before completing initial reports, statements, or interviews about an incident. Is that what you were saying, Silverio?
Yes.
And use of force, I know the committee has, oh, Travis, I just see your hand up and I will get to you. This committee has talked about kind of categorizing use of force into use of force that results in serious harm or injury. Because use of force can also mean like a force hold, like an arm hold or something.
It's a different ad hoc committee.
Okay. All right. Travis Smith.
You got there for me, Kevin. I was just going to say, if you're just using use of force in general, yeah, that's pretty broad. So basically anybody that gets arrested for like resisting arrest. So it's going to capture maybe a lot more, I think. And it sounds like this committee's already had some sort of continuum where they define different types of use of force. And I was just going to suggest that might be something you want to look at because otherwise you're going to be looking at 500 to 1,000 misdemeanor crimes at least that I have every year, probably 1,000 that will fall into that category. And I don't know if that's necessarily what you're trying to do or not, but I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Ems? You're muted.
I see that problem and maybe not use deadly force, but excessive use of force.
And we're just noodling around with words right now. This is not a motion, so I'm just trying to capture thoughts here. Incidents involving excessive use of force. Silverio, what do you think of that?
I think it's pretty clear. Use of force is usually the discharging of a firearm in most broad terms. Any sort of use of force that we've kind of discussed has been defined as the use of a firearm. So I don't want to be.
Sorry.
I don't want to be like very. If we're talking about police brutality, then that's already defined. But use of force being the discharge of a weapon, the possible discharge of a weapon that could result in serious harm. Yeah, I don't think I think we shouldn't be limiting to ourselves here.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we were not painting too broad a brush where use of force can include less than deadly force.
There's use of force to me is also using pepper spray needlessly, mace, and it happens.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, your subcommittee, direct me how you want to change this.
I wouldn't add the excessive. I would say use of force. It's like you're playing video games with somebody who knows what a blue shell is, and you're playing Mario Kart. It's like we've already kind of defined use of force.
And whose definition are we speaking of? The definition of the police officers or us? Or our definitions?
Yeah, good point.
Absolutely. I am merely your facilitator.
I'm okay with how it is. what the committee is basically based on police brutality, and our motions are gonna reflect police brutality. So use of force will be good.
Okay. And Ems, how are you feeling about the kind of thought that you started on about allowing footage to be available to both parties?
So if city wants the officers to have the ability to view the footage, victims or suspects that suffer police brutality should also get access to the video before they do their report.
Sounds like a good motion.
Okay, we've got incidents involving use of force or police brutality. Officers should be prevented from reviewing footage of an incident before completing initial reports, statements, or interviews about an incident. If the city wants the officers to have the ability to view the video footage, suspects that suffer police brutality should also have access to the video footage before they complete their report. Is that an accurate kind of statement of what? Okay, I see a thumbs up. All right, at
Could we
this
add
point,
use of force to the second part as well?
okay, sure, yeah. So suffer police brutality
Or use of force?
or use of force. There we go.
Thank you.
Sure. Let's see. Now we need someone to move this and second it if we want to act on it.
I second that.
I missed who moved it.
Erica?
Okay, Erica, are you moving this? Or I'm going to say that you're moving it. Sandra has moved it and Erica has seconded.
Yay.
Yay. Okay. And now we have discussion, questions, or comments.
My comment is let's go move to a vote.
Yeah, move it.
All right.
Question.
Okay. I hear you. I'm going to go down the list. Ems, how do you vote?
Yes.
Macy?
Yes.
Thank you. Abdul Rahman?
Yes.
Erica?
Yes.
Silverio?
Yes.
Sandra?
Yes.
All right, that is 6 yes, 0 no. So that motion carries as well. Okay. Let's go back up. Unless you want to go a different direction, and then Silverio, I see your hand. Go for it.
I really feel it's important that we look at policy 15.
Okay, 15, which is include a disciplinary matrix clearly defining consequences for officers who fail to adhere to the agency's body camera policy. Okay. You want to speak to that idea, Silverio?
Yeah, so the reason why it was partially enacted is because there's no matrix, but that any sort of let's see, any sort of discipline requires an analysis of similar cases to ensure consistency. The whole point of having the body cams is to make sure that there are officers who maintain the body cam policies. And if they do not maintain those body cam policies, they should have consequences.
All right, thank you. Ems, I see your hand.
Yes. So I also agree that we need to work on this. I don't know how specific we want to get to it, or just give the idea that they need to work on a matrix. Just because I don't, from what I understand, the if an officer fails to do something, it falls back into their supervising officer, and then they decide what punishment or what do they get, and hardly anything works like that anymore. For the sake of equal um, um, for sake of equity. So it's just to me it's a little bit ridiculous that there's not a matrix in place that they have to follow. So I'm okay with how it's running if someone wants to move it like that.
Would it be helpful if Lieutenant San Miguel reminded us of the disciplinary actions available?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to speak kind of in generalities, but generally we use a progressive discipline matrix in a lot of our discipline cases. So they start at a lower level of discipline, and then if there's another offense, it's a higher level of discipline, and then a higher level of discipline. With that being said, the more egregious the offense, someone could be terminated for something the first time it occurs, untruthfulness, insubordination, certain excessive force cases, or those type of things. A person could be terminated the very first time it happens, but a lot of the lower level discipline issues, we end up following a progressive discipline matrix where we have to consult with human resources and look at similar cases that have occurred in our agency and other places in the city. So it really does just depend.
Thank you, Lieutenant. One of the things I think I kind of heard Silverio and perhaps Ems allude to is that, instead of trying to get exact wordings, that this particular recommendation is kind of broadly written, and it may be, appropriate. That would be an easily understandable recommendation that the council could receive from the committee. That sounded like a bunch of gobbledygook, didn't it?
There's no guidelines for this necessarily, but we do need to make sure that we have clear consequences for any sort of continued use of, turning off a body camera, turning off footage, just some way failing to adhere to the policies of the agency.
I'm going to paste that into our ongoing list of motions here. Okay. So we're looking at prevent officers from reviewing footage of an incident. Oh my gosh, Kevin. This is what happens when it gets close to 8 o'clock, right? There we go. Include a disciplinary matrix clearly defining consequences for officers who fail to adhere to the agency's body camera policy. Okay, that's what we have in the discussion. If you're comfortable with that, great. Someone should move that. If we're still kind of working on it, let me know.
I'll move it.
Ems has moved. Looking for a second.
Second.
Abdul Rahman second. Thank you. Questions, comments, discussion? I don't hear any. So we're going to vote. Ems, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Macy?
Yes.
Macy? Thank you. Abdul Rahman?
Yes.
Thank you. Erica?
Yes.
Thank you. Silverio?
Yes.
Thank you. Sandra?
Yes.
Thank you very much. That is 6 yes and 0 no. So that motion carries as well. We have approximately 15 minutes remaining in our meeting, and there are 2 recommendations left if that's what you want to focus on, or if you want to go a different direction. Ems, I see your hand. Go for it.
I added in the messages
Okay.
something that I wanted to get to work on. It's about the muting policy. There's currently none. I haven't had the chance to work on it or have wording on it, but it's to prohibit officers from muting their phones at all times, so they cannot mute it at all. If something has to get taken out, it could always be edited.
Okay. I want to make sure that everyone can see the chat box. I assume that you can, but I just want to double check. Let me know if you cannot.
And the reason why I want to move that is because even the chief actually commented that it could get a little bit more tightened up, and also because to me it's important. I understand that it's very expensive to have video running 24/7, and that's a waste of tax dollars. But if we are able to, if they are able to mute their microphones all the time, we might be missing things that the officer might be saying that might either be racist, bias, against police policy. Really, it doesn't even have to be about police brutality, but it could just be against police policy. So if we are able to hear these conversations, then we are actually able to educate our officers and actually give the proper training to the officers. So it's not only for us, but it's also for the police department to get better.
Okay, so I'm going to just read this out loud, mostly for my own benefit here. Muting microphones should be prohibited, and audio will be redacted or edited if needed at the stored facility. Officers who mute microphones will get appropriate training or disciplinary action according to the disciplinary matrix. Taking muting power from an officer will increase trust in disciplinary processes and will help EPD train officers as needed. Okay. All right. So I appreciate that, Ems. You've addressed the 3-question format, and I see your specific worded recommendation in there. So, okay. Conversation, discussion about this. Okay.
I am a little bit curious if our visitors, sorry, I keep forgetting your names, Lieutenant San Miguel and Travis would like to speak to this, just out of curiosity, but you don't have to.
So I would just like to say, as being the person that runs our training division, I am not opposed whatsoever to this motion that you're putting forward. There's many times when I'm reviewing videos for training purposes and the officers have muted. And so I can't hear what they're saying, and they're having conversations that, you know, they're talking about what they're going to do and why they're going to do it. But I can't tell what they're thinking because it's not captured on audio. And that audio would be just so beneficial in those situations where we're reviewing videos for training purposes. It would also be critical in a lot of internal affairs cases where we're reviewing video. You know, if we could just hear what the officers are saying, it goes a long way to understanding what they're thinking and why they're doing what they're doing. So I would concur with what the chief said last time. I am not opposed to tightening up our policy as it pertains to muting of the body cameras.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Other questions or comments? Okay, I'm going to share the screen with the wording of the motion, and I've also included Ems's comments. But the motion would read, muting microphones should be prohibited and audio will be redacted and edited if needed at the stored facility. And you've got the civilian review board or the police auditor in parentheses there. Officers who mute microphones will get appropriate training or disciplinary action according to the disciplinary matrix. Sandra, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, it has some bearing on what's going on here. I drove cab in Alaska and I got a ticket because the cops kept calling me and telling me they wanted me to hurry up and get there right now. And we had a stack of customers calling over and over and over, and including the cops telling me to hurry up and come get a potential customer because they were drinking in public and they didn't want to take them in. Well, I hurried up and I got a ticket for it. I was not allowed access to police records. And I tell you what, it cost me a ticket.
Thank you.
That's it.
Appreciate that, Sandra. That sounds kind of frustrating.
It was very frustrating.
Yeah. Okay. If we are to the point where someone wants to move this and second it, we can go ahead and have a conversation and then vote.
I'll move this motion.
Ems has moved the motion. Okay, and Kevin is now looking for another form. Got it. Okay. Ems moves. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I think Erica, I heard you second. And do we have discussion, comments, questions?
Good policy.
Okay, good policy. Any other comments or thoughts? Hearing none, let's vote. Ems, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Macy?
Yes.
Thank you. Abdul Rahman?
Big yes.
A big yes. Thank you. Erica?
Yes.
Thank you. Silverio?
Also a big yes.
Also a big yes. Thank you. And Sandra? Sandra? Are you there, Sandra?
I
Sorry
don't,
about that. I got it. Yes. Thank you.
Okay,
Em.
great. Thank you. That's 6 yes, 0 no. So that motion carries as well. All right. We are hurtling towards our 8 o'clock deadline. And I'm wondering What is next? Okay, we've got one more on the list. Let me share my screen here. Okay. Actually, we have two. One of them is notify subjects that they have the option to remain anonymous and stop recording or storing footage if they choose this option. And the second is allow civilians to review footage of themselves or their relatives and request this be released to the public and stored for at least 2 years. Any thoughts or comments about those two?
Yeah, I definitely think that we can. I would like to move forward both of these policies. I think they were just something that they don't, for my understanding, they don't require much, you know, kind of taking apart and sort of looking at it. I think they speak to their credibility in the policy.
Okay, I'm going to cut and paste back to that other document that I've got going so that we can maintain some consistency with that. Let's see. Okay. So Vario has suggested that the subcommittee approve both of these. I do recall a conversation that this subcommittee had regarding the first one, notify subjects that they had the option to remain anonymous and stop recording and storing footage if they choose this option. And I think the chief spoke to some concerns about that possibility. And I don't recall the exact conversation, but I do remember that there was a conversation. Anyone recall those details?
It seems like, can you hear me?
Yep.
It seems like he was concerned that people were getting recorded at a time that was beyond inappropriate.
Right, that's right. There was that issue. Mm-hmm.
Like rape victims or domestic violence victims.
Right.
He wanted to show respect for people who were having a tough time already.
Mm-hmm. Any other?
I think there's another thing is there's this situation where a recording has been made and maybe someone wants it to not be retained. However, we're required to retain it for a certain amount of time per state law. So we have to follow state law in retention. So once the video's been made, we can't just not store it. We have to follow state law as it pertains to that. And I would say in regard to people wanting to remain anonymous, you know, there's going to be situations where, you know, say you have someone who was involved in a DUI crash and they killed someone else, and we're talking to them and interviewing them. That is probably not going to be a realistic option to not record that conversation because, you know, there's evidence to be gathered at that point. So there's a lot of different variables with this one.
So, Lieutenant, if I understand you correctly, that would be a case where a suspect involved in say a fatal car crash would say, nope, I don't want to be recorded. And that would cause some problems.
Correct. Really, any kind of serious assault or anything like that, you know, I don't think we would want to give up the opportunity to record if we could in those situations.
Ems, go ahead.
I was kind of thinking along those lines too. So I just kind of wanted to add to some sort of to minor crimes or minor stops or something along those lines. I don't know what the committee thinks.
So I've added the words notify subjects in minor crimes or stops. Travis, go ahead.
Thanks. I just wanted to, can you hear me? I'm having some
Yes.
bandwidth in my house. I apologize. I just wanted, I was thinking back to what the chief said, and something that I think what we're touching on, and maybe kind of one way to differentiate between the two things is, we're talking about, I used to prosecute a lot of sex assault cases in the Marine Corps. I think everyone here has hit it right on the nose. There are certain times where you really don't want to record someone. It's really inappropriate. And it has the ability to re-victimize the victim because there's now a recording of something happening. And I take that pretty seriously. But I think that there's one thing that I don't know if it's been as clearly articulated as it could be in this discussion is the difference between notifying someone when they are not a suspect versus when they are a suspect. And so that's the big concern with EPD, and my concern is you want to be able to record someone you suspect of a crime. Because one, you're going to have a more reliable record of what that person actually said, which is important. And again, yeah, it can really hamstring the investigation. It's just not realistic to expect to do that. So when you're crafting this language, maybe one thing to think about is differentiating between those two things, right? Because you want that police officer to be able to seek the truth in the investigation. And generally, recorded statements from defendants are probably the best way to get that, right? Because it's there for perpetuity. But there are a lot of times where you don't necessarily want to record it with the victim. It's inappropriate. And so having that flexibility, I think, and having that flexibility sort of enshrined in whatever recommendation you made, I think could be really helpful. I personally prefer to not record victims of sexual assault after. When I would work with NCIS, the first thing I would tell them to do is you turn your video camera off before you take their statement. Because they are going to be all over the map in what they say, and the reliability of their statements right after a sex assault is, their memory is just totally out of whack. They're still experiencing the trauma. This is not the best time to interview them. And so, I don't know, I think that maybe being able to differentiate between someone that you're investigating as a suspect versus everyone else around, I think is something that might be helpful.
Okay. I got the gist of that, I think. And a time check, folks, we're at 8 o'clock. I believe that we have about 5 more minutes that we can take care of the business here. So I would ask that if you can stay for 5 minutes, that would be marvelous. If not, I completely understand. We do need a require of 4 people to maintain quorum. So I'll keep an eye on that. Ems, I see your hand, and then Sandra.
Before Travis goes, I wanted to check what does an officer, the officer has a power to say who's a suspect. They could just say that they're a suspect, and what I have understand. So I could be walking down the street, or driving my car, and I am becoming a suspect of X reason. Or let's say I'm picking cans, looking through trash cans, and now I might be becoming suspect of, I don't know, maybe I look like I've been doing drugs or something. And that's what the officer can say. So I become a suspect. So now I am being recorded automatically. So that's kind of where I'm
Well,
at.
I think that when you have an interaction with a law enforcement official and they think you're a suspect, these are defined legal terms in regards of why they're having that contact with you, right? Like they have to articulate reasonable suspicion of a crime. They can't stand and talk to you unless they can articulate that. So I do think that that will ease that concern a little bit. But I understand what you're saying, that there's a concern that an officer will just go, well, I suspected him of a crime, so that's why I kept recording, even though they asked not to. The officers has to articulate reasonable suspicion and eventually probable cause for that crime that they suspect that individual of being committed. If they can't do that, they're going to be in violation of that policy. If you're saying that person's not reasonably a suspect, why are you doing that?
So would it be okay if the video was not on, but the audio was?
Well, you have to notify someone in Oregon law if you're audio or video recording that. And I don't know the technological features of the body cams too much, but my understanding is when you turn them on, you turn them on. They have to physically cover with like a piece of tape or something that video.
Right. So kind of where I was going is like, so let's say if again, I'm just using the picking up cans and looking through trash cans, and the officer decides to stop me. Would it be okay to cover the camera but keep the audio until the officer definitely decides to this is becoming a problem, or this is becoming an issue, and I have more reasons to know that this person is a suspect, so I could take my glove off and then just record the whole thing?
Well, I think that would be logistically a little tricky, and I don't want to like overstep my bounds in regards of advising police how to do their job, because that's not my job. My job is to take what they give me and prosecute the cases that I feel should be prosecuted. But you know, there's sort of a rote thing that every officer does when they make contact with you. Is just, you know, the state of Oregon requires me to tell you that you're being audio and video recorded at this time. So for all of a sudden you just to say you're being audio recorded, and then as soon as you decide to go, you know what, I'm going to video record this, stop, now we got to do this again. I think it could be a little clunky, and I don't know what the benefit of that would be, but again, I would defer to EPD on how that would hamstring them, or what it would or wouldn't do to them.
And I guess I would just say that our current policy, we want them recording all investigative contacts. So anything they're in the process of investigating, even if they don't have probable cause at that point to make an arrest or something like that, we want those conversations captured.
Thank you. Folks, we are at the end of our time. So what I'm going to suggest is that for these remaining two recommendations, that if you have proposed wording for those, and we've talked about maybe some modifications, that you please email me your proposal, and I will make sure that that gets into the report, not as a recommendation passed by the ad hoc committee, but as something that the subcommittee on body-worn cameras considered, but ran out of time and didn't quite get the motion passed. So it will be included in the report if you want. So that's the option that we have before us. Unfortunately, we have these time constraints. I want to thank both Lieutenant San Miguel and Travis Smith for your time this evening. We thought, or maybe we gave you the false impression that maybe you were going to have the ability to go away and have some personal time tonight, but that didn't happen. We appreciate your time sticking with us. Thank you. Thank you to Sandra, Silverio, Abdul Rahman, Erica, Macy, and Ems. And always, Jeremy, thanks for pulling the Zoom levers in the back room. Appreciate it, folks. I hope your families are well. You stay healthy. Appreciate your help and your efforts on this important work. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night. Buenas noches.
Good night.
Good
Thank you.
Buenas noches.